do you ever feel guilty for making art? Or like every piece has to be perfect and it's really frustrating when it doesn't turn out like you had imagined it in your head? You're definitely not alone with that, and guilt and perfectionism are definitely two of the biggest blockers that I think artists face, so I'm going to be talking about that in today's video. So hello if you're new here, my name is Katie, I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, and this is the second video in my series called How to Make More Art. I'll leave a link to the first one up above in the corner and also in the description box, but that one was all about overwhelm, so in terms of having too much choice with our materials, too many ideas, overbuying and not really sure where to start. So if you're interested in that one, I will leave that linked, but today is all about guilt and perfectionism. I want to unpack why these feelings show up, why they keep us stuck, and some gentle encouragement and ideas to move through them. I used to feel really guilty about wasting paper, wasting all the good art supplies, especially expensive ones, and feeling like what I created was never good enough. And I still have those days where I feel like I'm not good enough to be an artist, let alone a full-time one, because this is my job, so there's definitely plenty of comparison and perfectionism creeping in for me too. But that's when I realised that guilt and perfectionism are really sneaky, and they look different, but they're actually really connected. So whilst I'm talking about this, I will be painting, so you're seeing a process of one now, which is a gorgeous garden scene from the garden theme I did on Patreon in August, and then I'll end with an interior scene, which is pretty detailed and complicated, a bit different for me, but another one from our Patreon theme for interiors, which was in September. I'll just be chatting over the top, so let me know if you have any questions about the materials, but I'll try and link everything in the description box as well. So yes, guilt and perfectionism are connected. There's time guilt, should I be doing something more useful? There's resource guilt of I don't want to waste any materials, and then there's the identity guilt of do I deserve to call myself an artist? And when it comes to perfectionism, there's a fear of starting, there's a fear of the blank page, there's waiting for the perfect conditions and having the perfect amount of time or more time in general to do it. There's the fear of finishing, of endless tweaking and then eventually overworking, and the fear of being seen, of comparing yourself to others, and comparisons coming up on all of these videos because it is such a big deal, especially with social media. But they feed each other, so guilt is telling us that we are wasting time, and then perfectionism is telling us you won't get it right anyway. And together they stop us as artists from creating at all. Even having art as my full-time job, there's still plenty of other things that I need to do, like editing and admin, and often when I do sit down to create, there's a little voice in the back of my head telling me I should be doing something else. I should be doing something more productive, and there's keeping house and all these other things that society tells us we also need to do. And art, sadly, is one of those things that becomes one of the unimportant tasks. It's like one of the hobbies that you will maybe do if you have the time, but otherwise you can't make time for it. And obviously this whole video series is about making time because it's something I feel really passionate about. Like I mentioned, there's the resource guilt, so worrying about wasting expensive materials or not using supplies correctly. Even with some of my stuff when I'm sharing on YouTube, I get told I'm using things wrong, and I honestly don't believe there is a wrong way to create. If you are putting it on the page, then surely that's the best thing about it. You're using these things, and that's what they were made for. They were made to be used in any way that you want to use it. Guilt often comes from our internalized expectations, and that can come from family or society, our own inner critic, things like school growing up, especially with art class, or having these sort of set formulas. So it does come from those rather than the act of creating itself. And then with perfectionism, it really blocks our creativity because we don't want to start. We're waiting for the perfect idea or the perfect setup, the perfect supplies. And then there's endless tweaking, so never finishing a piece because it doesn't turn out how you want to. You're comparing yourself to other people's art, especially on Instagram, and seeing all this beautiful art on your feed. You don't see what goes into that or all of the different tries beforehand, so you're measuring your work against others and then you're finding it difficult. Perfectionism is kind of disguised by our high standards, and I think as artists we do hold ourselves to really high standards, but it actually prevents growth and learning. So there's definitely a relationship between guilt and perfectionism. Guilt says that I'm wasting time and materials, and perfectionism says, even if I do try, it won't be good enough. So together they create a freeze response. They stop you from even trying and picking up the brush or the pencil, and stopping you from creating art altogether. So what I want to talk about, I know that all sounds doom and gloom, but I do have some strategies to work through them. And this is what my art process is all about. And, that's why my book is called Sketchbook Joy, because it is about finding our joy in our work and creating for the process and the enjoyment of it rather than the end result. So the first one is to reframe your creating as play. I talk a lot about play in our art, and I don't often come to a piece thinking I know what I'm going to be doing because I'm kind of coming to it without expectation. So see it as play. Remind yourself that you can't waste paint or paper because this is teaching you something, even if it doesn't go as planned. And I talked a lot about this in my first UK workshop that I hosted just a couple of days ago on Friday the 26th of September. And we were talking a lot about perfectionism there, how to loosen up. And yeah, it was a really lovely workshop. And I talked a lot about turning off that mindset of this needs to be good, because I don't believe in good and bad art. The art that we don't like, there'll still be something that we can learn from it, and all of it really does feed into the art that we do like, but you wouldn't get there without the bad art or the things that you don't like. So everything is learning, and if we reframe it as play, I think that is the most important part. So you can sit down at your desk and create and just not have that expectation. Just play with your supplies. Just do some swatching. Just see how you go. I talked in the workshop about permission. So I basically was giving them a permission slip for the day of, telling them it's okay to just create and have fun. And one of the things that I was saying was that we're not here to create perfect art. We're here to just play and letting them just create whatever they felt like and not judging themselves for it. And you can literally write yourself a note that says, it gives you permission to make bad art today, or I give myself permission to play and just see what happens. And I think that mindset is really important. So like I mentioned a lot, it is about the process. So it's a process over product mindset, focusing on enjoying the act and not the outcome. So if you're having fun just playing with your paints, trying different techniques, putting loads of water on, doing a wet on wet technique, or trying new supplies, that is what it's all about. It's not about the outcome and creating a perfect piece of art. You can also do small guilt-free experiments. So set a timer for say 10 minutes or even 5 minutes and just use some scrap material to trick your brain into lowering the stakes, as it were. So you're not expecting yourself to do it. And this is another exercise I do a lot. So if you set yourself a 5-minute timer, there's no way you can create perfect art because it's impossible. You can't do anything amazing in 5 minutes. Nobody can. So it kind of gives your brain, it kind of tricks you into thinking, well, this doesn't have to be good because how can it be good in 5 minutes? And that's why I started using timers in the first place, because I did used to be a perfectionist and I used to do very detailed work. And to switch my brain off from worrying about what it would be like and overthinking every single decision, I set myself timers, and that just stopped me from overthinking. I do talk a lot about timers in my work because I use them so much to help switch off my brain. And it's a similar thing with our guilt-free experiments of just seeing what happens when you do create, knowing that it's not going to be good anyway because we're not expecting it to be. These expectations we put on ourselves can be really limiting, so try and switch that off. And the timer definitely helps, although I know it can be frantic at first. It's definitely something I've come to love, and yeah, I really struggle to create without them. Even if you start with just 5 minutes, you might get really into it and then want to carry on for another half an hour, or you might just do that and that's enough, but you've created and there was no expectation. And then also to celebrate your imperfections. So share or keep the pieces that are unfinished is why I never recommend tearing things out of your sketchbook, because it's important to see that sort of messy experiments, and it's proof of growth. So from the very beginning of your sketchbook all the way to the end, you'll be able to see where you've learnt things, where you've tried different colours or different materials. Whether you like them or not, it doesn't matter, because that's your growth, that is your creating there, and that's what it's all about. So there are some sort of gentle shifts to help our mindset when we're creating. One of them is to reframe our guilt into gratitude. So instead of, I shouldn't be using these supplies because I'm no good anyway, you can reframe that into, I get to use them to learn. I get to experiment with these and find my own style and work out how I can use them in my art, and being grateful to have these supplies to play with. You can combat perfectionism with play, so like I said, setting a quick timer and just messing around. No pressure for it to be good, no pressure for it to be a final piece. in the workshop I just made us create lots of marks and playing with mark making and textures and combining different things. So you really don't have to create finished pieces of art every time, especially in your sketchbook and especially when you just want to turn off your perfectionism mindset. The permission slip idea is another one for gentle shifts because it's really powerful writing something down. I've definitely found that with my morning pages. Being kind to myself on the page really helps me be kinder to myself on the art. So write that down, give yourself permission and stick it somewhere you can see it. Lastly is to focus on the process rather than the product. So focusing on how it feels, not how it looks. If you had a good time and the result isn't great, don't let that affect you because it was all about the process anyway. You had fun creating it. And that's the other thing with social media, and I've definitely found that, where I've created a piece I absolutely love and then I've shared it on Instagram and it has got crickets and it didn't get the love that I thought it should have, whereas something I didn't like did. So there's definitely two sides to that one. And yeah, it can be really difficult because social media is a big comparison trap, but it is helpful to focus on your process instead because you can still look at it and realize, well, I really enjoyed this one and I love how it looks, so it doesn't really matter what other people think. That's the tricky thing with social media now, is that we are allowing other people to impact how we feel about the final piece. And yeah, it's really difficult and I do it too. So, I still struggle with these things. I'm certainly not an expert with it, but I do want to share these things just because they really help me, and our mindset is so important when it comes to art. I love Instagram and social media because it does help me see things in different lights sometimes. And like I said, if something I didn't like went up and got loads of likes, it does help me reframe my thoughts and see it in different ways because other people have been really kind about it. Being kind to ourselves about our art is the nicest thing we can do, and that's definitely something that I'm still learning. But it does help for me to focus on the process. So like I said, I don't go in with expectations. I don't have a thing in my mind. I don't have a image in my mind for how I want something to turn out often. And I think that really helps because I don't know what will happen. And so I'm open to these surprises and these experiments on the page just to see what does happen. Now, I have done a whole video about how someone says that I'm using my sketchbook wrong, and I recently saw another reel about this and I feel really, really strongly about that. So I'll leave that linked. But it doesn't matter how you do it as long as you're finding the joy in it. Yes, I create lots of finished pieces in my work, but I don't create thumbnails. I don't do just sketches with pencil. So these are my play and my experiment. And it doesn't mean they're wrong just because they don't look like yours. And remember, I have got many, many years of practice. So it's really important not to compare ourselves. I can talk a lot about comparison, and there are definitely some things that will overlap in these videos, but it is really important to focus on what brings you joy. I love creating work like this in my sketchbooks and finished pieces because that's just how I create, and I do still work quickly, and I know that they can look really finished, but that's where I find my joy, and so I'm not going to stop that. Even if somebody tells me, well, that's making it look bad for others and you're putting extra pressure on them. Unfortunately, that's not on me, that's on them. So I really hope this has been encouraging. I really do think that focusing on your joy is more important than anything else. You might be in a really sort of niche style, and that's fantastic, but maybe other people don't quite understand it yet. But if you enjoyed it and had a lot of fun, then that's the main thing. We really shouldn't feel guilty about using our time for art. I know it can be so hard to make the time to do it, but like I said, setting timers always helps, and then working on our mindset with perfectionism, it is really hard, and yes, there's loads of different things that we can punish ourselves for, of using supplies differently, but I think if you open yourself to seeing it as play and experimentation, I think that has definitely been the biggest shift that I've had, and I've had lots of different things to try that, like the mixed media itself, of trying different combinations, of changing the order of things, and then also the timers. These have been ways that I've changed my mindset for art, which makes it easier for me. So as much as I can come to you telling you all of these things, I really do hope that you give it a go because, like I said, it was transformative for my work, so I hope it is for you. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my process as I've been chatting away, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I just want to close with a gentle reminder that your art doesn't have to be perfect to matter, and you don't need to earn the right to create. If you're having fun, then that is the main thing, and finding joy when you're creating in your sketchbook is the most powerful thing you can do to practice and find your style. Try giving yourself permission this week to make one small messy piece and let me know if any guilt or perfectionism tries to creep in, and I can't wait to chat to you about it in the comments. A big thank you for watching today. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you all next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later.